When most people think of Spartacus from 1960, they picture epic battle scenes, stirring speeches, and that unforgettable line, "I am Spartacus." But behind the scenes of this iconic sword and sandal classic lies a story filled with strange facts, Hollywood politics, and some truly unexpected moments that made it one of the most controversial and groundbreaking films of its time. Let's start with something wild. Director Stanley Kubrick didn't even want to do the film. He was only 30 years old when he took over from the original director, Anthony Mann, who was fired by Kirk Douglas after just a week of shooting. Kubrick had no control over the script or casting, which made this the only film in his career where he wasn't fully in charge. He later disowned it completely. Now here's a strange one. The film's iconic "I am Spartacus" scene was never supposed to be in the script. It was written later as a metaphor for unity and resistance against tyranny, and ironically, it became the most quoted moment of the entire movie. Even more ironic, the US government saw it as borderline subversive during the Cold War. Speaking of subversion, screenwriter Dalton Trumbo was actually blacklisted from Hollywood at the time for alleged communist ties. But Kirk Douglas decided to publicly credit Trumbo anyway, making Spartacus the first major film to break the infamous Hollywood blacklist. That move alone was both risky and revolutionary, and it helped end the era of McCarthyism in cinema. In terms of casting, Laurence Olivier played the Roman general Crassus, but his performance almost never made it to the final cut in one key scene. There was a subtle homoerotic bath scene between him and Tony Curtis, which was considered too controversial at the time and was removed. It wasn't restored until 1991, and fun fact, Anthony Hopkins dubbed Olivier's missing lines decades later. Kirk Douglas broke tradition by producing the film through his own company, Brenna Productions. He had full creative control and refused to wear any prosthetics or fake muscles. What you see on screen is his real physique at 44 years old, maintained by a strict regimen during shooting. Then there's the chariot scene. Although not as famous as Ben-Hur's, Spartacus's battle scenes were so huge they required thousands of extras. To get the wide shots, Kubrick used real Spanish soldiers lent by General Franco's government and paid them each a small fee and a sandwich for the day. Another odd fact, the Gladiator school scenes were filmed in brutal heat in Almeria, Spain, and many of the extras fainted during filming. Some of the battle cries had to be added in post, because the original footage was full of background noises like coughing and murmuring in Spanish. Kubrick, true to his perfectionist nature, insisted on dozens of takes for even simple lines. One actor said he had to walk down a staircase over 70 times because Kubrick didn't like the rhythm of his footsteps. Kirk Douglas, despite being the star, later admitted he was completely exhausted by Kubrick's intense filming methods. The massive budget for Spartacus, $12 million in 1960, was the largest ever for Universal at the time. They even had to build a whole Roman city replica. It was so expensive that some of the sets were reused in later films, including TV shows and spaghetti westerns. Gene Simmons, who played Varinia, was pregnant during filming. To hide her baby bump, the wardrobe team created special costumes and carefully framed shots. In some scenes, she's only filmed from the chest up, and no one ever noticed. One of the weirdest things? A real skeleton appears in one of the battlefield scenes. Kubrick wanted realism and reportedly used a genuine human skeleton for a background prop. It's never been confirmed officially, but several crew members talked about it years later. There was also a famous feud between Kirk Douglas and Charles Laughton, who played Gracchus. Laughton hated taking direction from such a young director like Kubrick, and the tension spilled over into several heated on-set arguments. Despite this, their scenes together turn out to be some of the film's best. The film's original runtime was over 3 hours and was trimmed down heavily by the studio. In fact, nearly 15 minutes were cut just weeks before release to make it more palatable for general audiences. Fortunately, many of those scenes were later restored in the 1991 remastered version. Even the title role was debated. Marlon Brando was considered for Spartacus before Kirk Douglas insisted on doing it himself. At the time, Brando was the bigger star, but Douglas saw it as his passion project and refused to let go. That decision became one of the defining choices of his career. And finally, despite being set in ancient Rome, several background extras can be seen wearing wristwatches in wide shots. These little continuity errors slipped by editing, but have become a fun Easter egg for film buffs over the years. So, the next time you watch Spartacus, remember, behind all the swords, sand, and stirring speeches lies a production filled with rebellion, perfectionism, controversy, and more than a few bizarre twists. It's a miracle the film turned out to be the classic it is today, and maybe even more of a miracle that it changed Hollywood forever.